Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your English teacher from Atamayiz Model School for Boys. Welcome back, my dear students, into the second course, the second semester, and inshallah, I hope you will enjoy this video. In this video, inshallah, we are going to talk about Unit 7. And the title of this unit is called Power, the Alternatives. Unit 7 is about power. We can say energy also, the alternatives. So let's start with lesson 1 and 2. Inshallah, in this video, you are going to learn about three things. The first thing is to know more about sources of energy. What are the sources of energy that we are using now? And what are the sources of energy scientists are developing these days? In this video also you are going to learn some new vocabulary of the lesson. You have to know the keywords of this lesson, and in the end you have to memorize some setbook questions that will help you answer the exam. So we have three things in this video, so let's get started. If I ask you a question about sources of energy, what are the sources of energy that you know, that you already know? Yes, who can tell me some names or list sources of energy that you already know? Yes, exactly. We have solar power, we have oil, natural gas, biomass, water energy, wind power, coal, and nuclear. So again, of course, you know some of them, not all of them. At least you know oil, you know coal, you know gas and water, but we have many sources of energy, not only oil and gas. We have nuclear power, we have water energy, we have wind power, and so on. So these are called sources of energy. Okay, are they all the same? Are they all the same type or the same kind? Of course not. They are not the same. If we divide them into two types or two kinds, we can find on the left we have oil, coal, gas, and nuclear power are kinds of non-renewable sources of energy. Again, oil, coal, gas, nuclear power are all non-renewable sources of energy. On the other side, we have solar energy, wind power, and also it's not written here, we have water power or wave power. These are called renewable sources of energy. So if you are asked to tell the types of energy, you have two types. The first one is non-renewable. Okay, give examples. Oil, coal, and gas. Oil, coal, and gas. These are non-renewable sources of energy. On the other side, we have solar energy, wind power, and wave power are all renewable sources of energy. So these are the main kinds or the main types of energy. They are divided into two types, non-renewable and renewable. So if we talk about Kuwait, who can tell me the main source of energy used in Kuwait? All of you know that in Kuwait, we don't have wind farms. We don't have wave power. We don't make use of waves. So what is the main source of energy used in Kuwait? Who can tell me? Yes, exactly. It's oil. In Kuwait, we depend mainly on oil. Oil is the main source of energy used in Kuwait. Now it's time to learn our vocabulary of the lesson. So let's get started. The first word that we have today, as you can see in the picture, that's a black, thick liquid, which has a very bad smell, and it's taken from the underground. So this is crude oil. Crude oil, it's oil in its natural state before refining. So crude oil. Repeat after me, crude oil. If you do something completely, so you do it entirely, so in a full way or in a complete way, so you can say entirely. Life has changed entirely these days. So entirely, repeat after me, entirely. The third word, when something is limited, you can say it is finite. Finite means limited. We don't have much of it, so it is finite. Be careful, we don't pronounce the final E in this word. We don't say finite, we say finite. The fourth word, when I talk about coal, oil, and natural gas, all of them are all forms of fossil fuel. That kind of fuel that is taken from the underground, it's fossil fuel. Of course, it causes pollution and maybe it's the reason of our problems today in the world. The word number 5, when we talk about fractional distillation, this is the process in which we take many things from crude oil, we take polymer to make plastic, we take petrol for cars, and we take tar for roads. This is called fractional distillation. Fractional distillation. In fractional distillation, we get something called polymer. Polymer, it's something that we take from oil and it's used to make plastic. Polymer, again, polymer, it's substance to make plastic. Polymer, as I said, for to make plastic, tar for roads, and petrol for cars are all taken from crude oil in this process, which is called refining. The refining process is very important to get many things from crude oil. Okay, so you have to memorize them because they are very important. They will help you in the exam, of course, for the translation question. Okay, now let's have some meaningful sentences containing these words, the keywords of our lesson in meaningful sentences. The first one, we have crude oil. If you put this one or put this word in a sentence, you can define it. At least it is a thick black liquid with an unpleasant smell. We get oil, of course, or crude oil from the underground, and it has bad smell or unpleasant smell. The second one, life has entirely changed, completely changed because of the discovery of oil. The third one, the Earth's natural resources are finite. So what does it mean? Finite means they are limited. They will run out soon. We will not have oil in the future. So it will run out, so it's finite. The fourth sentence, oil, gas, and coal are all forms of something called what? Fossil fuel. Fossil fuel. Polymer, it's taken from oil. Polymer is taken from oil and used to make plastic. Of course, we use polymer to make something called plastic. The last sentence, oil needs refining. Why? In order to get polymer for plastic, petrol for cars, and tar for roads. Again, let's read the sentences again. The first one, crude oil is a thick black liquid with an unpleasant smell. Life has entirely changed because of the discovery of oil. The Earth's natural resources are finite they will run out soon. Oil, gas, and coal are all forms of of fossil fuel. Polymer is taken from oil and used to make plastic. Oil needs refining in order to get polymer, petrol, and tar. So these are the words, but in meaningful sentences. Okay? Now open your book, page 56. What do we have here? Of course, we have something about the power of oil. We are talking mainly about oil in this topic, but before we read about oil, let me read the list of energy sources that we have here: coal, solar power, oil, gas, and nuclear. Again, coal, solar, oil, gas, and nuclear. Nuclear here means الطاقة النووية. Of course, you know gas, oil, النفط, solar energy, الطاقة الشمسية, coal, الفحم. So these are sources of energy that we have in our world. But in this exercise, you have to tell me which one is odd. I mean strange one or different one. Which is the odd one out, and tell me why. Huh? Who can tell me? Just think a little because before you start answering, because it's not easy, by the way. Which one is odd and why? Exactly. The odd one is solar power. Why is solar power different from these sources of energy? I'll tell you why. Because solar power is a renewable source of energy. Solar is a renewable source of energy. It's not finite. The sun is not finite. We always have the sun, and we will have the sun in the future. It has no end, so it's not finite. So it is a renewable source of energy. While coal, oil, and gas, and nuclear, of course, are all non-renewable sources of energy. We have something else which is not written here. All of them cause pollution. They cause damage to the environment, but the solar energy, it's a clean source of energy. It's renewable and clean. It doesn't cause any kind of pollution. The second exercise, or the second question in this exercise, you have to tell me the advantages and disadvantages of different kinds of energy. In terms of what? In terms of the cost, the situation now and in the future, and its effect on the environment. So I'm talking about the advantages and disadvantages of different kinds of energy in terms of cost, the situation now and in the future, and the environment. Think for a while, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay. After thinking about this exercise, we have some ideas here, of course. Of course, you have some ideas. We are talking about the power of oil. Of course, you have to read this exercise to get the answers. This is called the power of oil. We are talking about the situation now and in the future, the impact of these sources of energy on the environment, and of course, the cost. If we talk about the advantages of different kinds of energy, they make our life more modern. Of course, we need all sources of energy to make our life modern, to make our life faster, and to make our life more comfortable. Imagine our life without planes. How would we travel? Okay, of course, planes use fuel to work. So imagine our life without fuel. Imagine our life without factories. Factories also need fuel. Imagine our life without electricity. We get electricity using fuel. So they make our life modern, much faster, and much more comfortable. This is number one. Concerning the disadvantages of different kinds of energy, of course, they are expensive and they cost a lot of money. If we talk about the impact or the effect of uh, sources of energy on the environment, of course, they damage, they spoil, they are bad for the environment and cause pollution. So they contribute to something called global warming. Global warming, الاحتباس الحراري. Also, drilling for oil destroys animal habitat. Destroy animal habitat. Habitat means the natural home for birds and animals. So this is called habitat. So we have many disadvantages of different kinds of energy. More specifically, the non-renewable sources of energy. They damage the environment, they cause pollution, they cause global warming, and they destroy animal habitat. So these are the disadvantages of different kinds of energy. On page 57, exercise 3, we have some words from the text. Okay, we have to match these energy words from A to E with their meanings from 1 to 5. Of course, you have to use a dictionary or a glossary at the end of the book to match the words with their definitions. Have your time. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, the first word here that we have finite, word B, contribute, C, refining, D, crude, and the last one, fossil fuel, which is E. Again, A, finite, B, contribute, C, refining, D, crude, E, fossil fuel. Now we have to match the first one, which is finite. Of course, it means limited. Exactly. Finite means limited. Contribute, it's a verb. So I mean, when I contribute to something, so I aid, I help, I aid in causing something to occur, to happen. So it's contribute. Refining, it's a process. So the process by which impurities are removed from a substance, this is called refining process. Crude, when I say something is crude, so it is in its natural or raw form. It is unprocessed. It means it's still natural, crude. And the last one, fossil fuel, of course, it is natural energy formed over a long period of time. Of course, from the remains of living organisms. So this is called fossil fuel. Of course, after having all these ideas about sources of energy and different kinds of energy and the advantages and disadvantages, you have to know these setbook questions. You have to memorize, you have to write them down, you have to study them well because they are very important, and of course they come in the exam, in the final exam. So what is the first one? Let's have a look at this one. Why is it necessary to develop new ways to provide energy? Or it comes in a different form. Why is it important to invest in new technologies to provide energy? In other words, why do we have to look for different kinds of energy? Of course, we have oil, we already have coal, we already have many different kinds. Why should we look for new ones? Of course, because natural resources are finite and they cause pollution. Natural resources are finite and they cause pollution. Question number 2. Crude oil can be made into many things. Crude oil can be made into many things. Give examples. What can we get from crude oil? Of course, we get petrol for cars. We get polymers for plastic, and we get tar for roads. Again, we get petrol for cars, polymer for plastic, tar for roads. Okay, if I ask you to mention some sources of alternative energy, non-renewable or renewable, alternative means it's a new one, so it is renewable sources of energy. They are wave power. You have to write them down. So they are very important. Solar energy and wind power. Wave power, later we have a lesson about wave power. We have a lesson in details about this one. Solar energy that comes from the sun. Wind power that, of course, it's clear it's from the wind, using the wind. The last question, how does using fossil fuel destroy nature? Is it detrimental? You can still remember the word detrimental, harmful to the nature? Of course, it pollutes the environment. Also, drilling for oil destroys animal habitat. Again, habitat, it's the natural home of animals and birds. So these are the most important setbook questions in our list. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy this video and see you again, inshallah, in next videos. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.